It's hard enough to choose a smart lock with the list of features being so varied, and even the meaning of some of the basic features can be different per lock. So when I tried out the latest U100 from Aqara, I found myself for the first time looking at a lock that did everything I needed it to. And despite all of the smarts, it could still survive a Canadian winter. Now that's because it has a -35-degree rating, and while that's not unique and not even the lowest I've seen, it'll survive 99.9% of days here in Canada without any problem. And even on the days when it might have an issue, Aqara has given us all the tools we need to access our homes and all of the features we need to make it both convenient and completely automated. Now it's not perfect, and I'm going to show you both sides of the coin here, but as we walk through the feature list, I think you'll see why this fits a lot of homes, and especially if you're in Canada, eh? And Aqara has built so many ways to access your home using this lock that in order to explain it, I need to show you, so come with me. With an Apple iPhone or an Apple Watch, we could simply tap on the door using the home key function. If I want some additional security, I can go into my wallet app and turn off Express mode. And then that will allow me to use Face ID or my phone's passcode. So here I'm going to tap my phone, and now it's requiring Face ID. I double clicked, but I've got to hold it near the lock to get it to unlock like that. Amazon and Google voice assistants can lock and unlock the door, and you can use their respective apps to do the same thing. Unlock Smart Lock U100.
What's your voice code for Smart Lock U100? Unlocking. Hang on. The Smart Lock U100 is unlocked.
Of course, with any iPhone, you have the ability to use their voice assistant too. Unlock Smart Lock U100. And then if I'd like, I can manage access for myself, and I can add in guest accounts. So this guest has their own personal access code, and I can take that away at any time. Now, if you don't want to rely on other systems with this lock, I get it. And actually, I think the physical options on here are better than the rest of those options. So not only do you have this quick control button on the home board if you want it, and you can send a quick unlock or lock command, you also have additional options inside of the main control page. Now, one of the things you'll notice is right here, my phone is connecting through Bluetooth, and that means you don't even have to have a hub if you connect through Bluetooth to this smart lock. So now you can see that little icon is active and it says Bluetooth is connected, which means when I'm in proximity to this lock, I just hit the long press, I can lock or unlock, and even if I turn off Bluetooth, as long as I get a hub from Aqara, then I have this gateway bound, and that means I don't have to be in proximity to my lock. I can long press and it will send the command through Aqara's hub to here. Now the fingerprint scanner is very, very accurate. You can add multiple fingerprints for people, and this lock can store locally on them up to 50 fingerprints. And if you need more than that, you've got a problem. The keypad allows everyone to have their own code. So I'm just gonna enter this in a couple of times.
Added successfully.
Now it's been added locally to this. So again, I don't need the internet. I don't need anything connected to have that password function. And everyone in your household can have multiple passcodes that they use to get in the home. I always notice you gotta wake up the keypad and then you gotta hit that lock button. You can also add NFC devices and attribute them to specific users, but your regular NFC tags are not gonna work with this. There's actually a few that you can buy directly from Aqara. Now, if the 4 AA batteries have run out and you've decided to ignore warnings for weeks, then there's a little USB port on the front that allows you to power up the lock. That, of course, is only important if you don't have the actual key. But probably the best way to open your door lock is with the G4 video doorbell, and in just a moment I'm going to explain why that is so important to my recommendation for this sitting on so many Canadian homes. Hello Automators, thanks for tuning in again. I'm Brian from Automate Your Life, and I'm here to save you time with smart home tech. Now, one of the ways I try to do that is to educate you on the best solutions, and that's what I'm doing today by showing you what is truly possible with a smart lock. Now, Aqara sponsored today's video, so I want to thank them for that. But as a viewer, understand that they haven't even seen this video before we published it, so they've had no impact on my review of this lock. They never do, and are great to work with that way. You've already seen how the lock works with all the different systems you might be using in your home, and you've already seen some of the physical methods, but this is just the tip of the iceberg, and the Aqara app is where the Canadian rubber hits the road. See, one of the problems that I've always had with a smart lock on my front door, and then a smart video doorbell as well, is that no system really puts this together well and allows me to go from recognizing a friend or family member is coming up to my home and then opening the door to let them in. Most of the time I end up just walking to the door and answering it like a normal, non-automated person, and honestly, this is the future, so who wants to talk to someone at the door? But seriously, I hate that gap. Here in Canada, 8 months of the year, they are frozen walking popsicles, and I want to let them in the door. Now, what's really great with what Aqara has done here is that they've combined the G4 video doorbell and this U100 in a really smart way. There's a button to unlock the door as soon as you look at the camera feed from the G4. So a notice pops up there, and by the way, this camera can do facial recognition. Then you see who it is and you press the unlock button, and you got no more popsicle friends. And that's before you give them a temporary code, input their fingerprint, give them an NFC tag, or invite them into your Apple home. And I know all of this easy home access sounds a little strange to our American friends, but as Canadians, we kind of let people in our homes. Every week, I gotta put out the garbage bins or the recycling or the organics bins or whatever else our city comes up with. And when I do that, one of the things I don't wanna have happen is the door lock. It's the same for grabbing packages or any other short trip out the door, like to my mailbox. There's this passage mode where you press a couple of zeros in the lock button as you go out the door, and then the lock won't lock on you. And that's even if you've used the automatic locking features. Now, when combined, all of those features make sure that at the end of the night, you know the door is locked. And I love that comfort level personally. This is something you can get on a lot of locks, but I also like the notifications that I get, and I like that the door itself will alarm based on your own settings. That's when it's been left unlocked or it's being tampered with. Now, there's a couple of other settings that are so important to have access to. So here's a quick musical interlude of what these settings do and what they mean. And that's really great, but my favorite thing is how automated you can make your door. You pretty much just need those auto locking features to make sure you're good at the end of the night, but there's an extra layer of security that can be created through the automation options. Now, at the end of the night, I like that I can just send a lock request through an automation to this lock. I don't need to think about whether or not the door has been dealt with because these are locally running automations when you're using this with an M2 hub from Aqara. And that specific hub is what I'm gonna recommend most of you use, because that gets you the Matter features, and in the future, that's gonna give you access to platforms like Samsung SmartThings, which isn't available today. That's actually Samsung's fault, because they are not yet using the Matter Bridge feature that's part of the Matter standard. That's complicated to explain, but just understand that today only Apple HomeKit is using the Matter Bridge feature, and that's how you can bring this lock into that system. But here's where details matter, and speaking of matter, here's the Aqara smart lock. It's installed in Apple HomeKit, but it's been done so through the Matter Bridge. Now, I can unlock it, but when I go into settings for this lock, I have the battery level, I have the ability to add it to home view, but I don't have any of the guest access settings or the home key setting. In order to get that, we can't use the Matter Bridge today. This is something that I would expect will change in the future, but today that detail will matter to a lot of people. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to hit the plus up here. I'm going to tap Add Accessory. And now I've got the plate off of the U100 and my HomeKit code is right there. So now just going to scan that, and you can see we're adding a lock as per normal. This is how you would add any other device. And there we go. Now I am going to just place it into a room. Okay, it's going to be the entrance, and here you go. Now you have your ability to add home key and use that feature. So this is a detail that's really important right now, but in the future, I imagine this will not be a problem. And one of the key options for you as you're setting this up is you can choose to turn on express mode, which doesn't require anything except the iPhone, or you can require Face ID to be used at that same time. So I'm going to turn on Face ID, and that means I have to have Face ID set up on this phone. I'd have to go through that process right now. Now I also get an option to set up access codes. So this is allowing me to set up a 6 to 10 digit access code. So I place that in there, and now if I'd like, I can set some lock automations based on maybe me arriving. So when anyone arrives, unlock the door. Now when I go into the settings for this lock, I can still control this whole thing, everything's fine, but when I go in to the settings, now I have manage access. We can add guests, so this is how you can add access codes for a guest at a certain time. I say, okay, the guest, and now here, it's just kind of created one for me, which is really nice, and I'm gonna hit done. So now I can give that code to someone, and they're going to be able to access the home using that code. Canadian families are a little complicated these days. I know mine is, and there isn't necessarily that nuclear family in every home, and I would say that a lot of family lives are complex, and the relationships are sometimes difficult to manage. But having a smart lock in that situation, I can tell you personally, it can actually make things more complicated. The point of home automation, as far as I'm concerned, is to make your life easier, and that's where the U100 shines with some of its automation options. There are certain people in your life that will be in your home only half the time. My son isn't here all the time, but I want to know when he comes in the door. I also kind of want to welcome him differently than I welcome other people. So I'm going to give him his own key code, and then I'm going to use the fingerprint scanner myself. I'm going to give someone else an NFC tag, and I can set different automations in Aqara's app for each of those situations. I can actually do it with any of the different ways to unlock the U100. But it gets even better than that. If someone enters the home using an assigned NFC tag, an assigned password, or an assigned fingerprint, which is really easy to manage in the app, you're able to start an automation that is specific to that person. So at that moment, I can turn on the lights to a specific setting for him, or I can welcome him with a speaker of some kind. There's a lot that I can do to welcome him into the home, and I get a notification that gives me that peace of mind that he's home and safe. And even if people are using Amazon or Google Home, you can identify that as the method being used to unlock the door. If they're using the phone with Bluetooth, or if the key is being used, you're gonna have all those options for automating, so your situation can be dealt with as a complex Canadian family. And because of the Matter Bridge feature, I can do something else that I've really enjoyed having as a part of my home personally. Today, because I'm in a rental, I actually have to get approval to install this lock. So instead, I've been using the SwitchBot lock here, and it's fantastic too. And it's one of those other recommendations I can make for a smart lock, especially for renters. But because it also has this Matter Bridge option, and because it integrates with those other smart home platforms, I've created an automation that lets me know when the door is unlocked. I have 2 light strips today that come on and show a yellow status. That just tells everyone in the home that the door is unlocked, and we probably shouldn't leave it that way all day. Now, the good news is the auto lock features take care of that 9 times out of 10, and I don't have to think about it. But if that visual is still there after some time, then I know I gotta go look at the door. There are a few more automation options, and I wanted to detail those for you because I know you guys get into the nitty-gritty with how to control these things. So here's how you can automate with the Aqara U100 door lock. I know earlier in the video I talked about how Canadian households were a little more open and were a little less concerned about security than maybe some of our southern neighbors, but understand that I still want my home secure. That's a really important component of a smart lock because I think a lot of people look at them as security gaps in your home once they're installed. And although any wireless system could open up an additional option for someone to get into your home, that's if they're really bright. And this specific lock has a lot of security on it that I was really happy to see. People talk about these software-based hacks that people could do and take advantage of, but honestly, that's a pretty specific skill and not your average person trying to break into a home. So the more critical concern to me is if someone can lift visually what my key code is. Now, as long as you're not displaying that key code for people on purpose, you can hide this well enough. And the finish on the control panel is the right kind. It's a matte finish and my finger presses are not showing up at all. And that's even with me testing this like 100 times in a row. The other thing that stops a lot of people with smart locks is concern of installation and getting that right. And there's actually only 3 measurements that I had to complete, plus use a single screwdriver to do this installation. Now, although I filmed this and that extended how long it took me to install it, it would have been less than 10 minutes if I was just focused and doing this. And I love that Aqara provided really clear step-by-step videos within their application that showed me exactly what I was doing. From that setup point of view, Aqara has always made it easy. And again, I'm gonna tell you that you need that hub from Aqara. It doesn't have to be the M2, but I would say you gotta have one of those, and it's a great idea to buy it with the G4, although that's not required. See, one of the things that you can find frustrating is all of those remote features and the automation features that I've shown you. Basically, they're not gonna work without the hub. What I mean by this is when you open the app, your phone connects through Bluetooth to the lock. But if you have that hub, you can still manage a lot through the Zigbee connection that's made between their hub and the lock. Zigbee, as far as I'm concerned, it's also a more secure form of communication because there's a lot less of it out there. Now, the absolute worst thing about this lock is the compartment that you have to get into to change the batteries. The good news is it's 4 AA batteries, so easy to find, and the other good news is that they're gonna last about 8 months before you have to change them. And they actually mean that, because I've moved this thing like 1,000 times now, and the battery's barely moved. But that compartment can be a little difficult, and they give you a tool called a spudger to get into this, but you probably have to come up with a better method of getting into it. It's not that it's terrible, but honestly, if I didn't point out something negative about this device, you'd all think that the sponsorship had turned me into a, I think people call it a shill. Anyways, the links are all below, but if you're considering a video doorbell, then you're gonna wanna see our comparison review that includes this G4 alongside some of the other biggest names in the industry. You'll start to see what I mean about that doorbell, and you'll learn that one of its competitors has a leg up in terms of event recognition. So check that video out. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and of course, don't hate, automate.